What's going on, guys? It's Dylan here. Today we'll be going over a ticker symbol analysis on the ticker symbol TSLA, Tesla. Tesla's made some really nice movements within the last few weeks, confirming the top of this range, breaking out, potentially setting to get to these next highs, we set in those December periods, getting to that $480 level. That is a little bit of ways away, but we're really seeing the trend shift change, seeing a lot of signs on the stock chart, breaking this descending fashion, coming down to this nice level, basing out, flagging out before breaking out. So we have seen a little bit of consolidation within the markets. Today we'll be using a variety of technical analysis techniques on multiple different time frames to get a good price prediction gauge to see where the stock price may or may not go within the next few days and or weeks. Let's go jump to the weekly time frame. On Tesla weekly time frame, we do see an inverted hammer candle pointing to the down as far as the current candle structure. Now, this is a bearish sign, but this doesn't, immediately mean that we are bearish on the weekly time frame, as there's a whole lot more data points to look at. And that's where we're going to start off, guys. When in doubt, zoom out. This is a very good and true quote. It's very simple. So over the last few years, Tesla's been a little bit choppy, very nice run-ups, a couple of years of drip coming back up. And it did enter a really big consolidation phase in this region over here before breaking out of these highs, which we mentioned, very strong breakout, pushing these levels. And this has really set the trend and raised the brow for the Tesla investors, as we reapproach new all-time highs, we crushed these. And we had a very solid move up. So when this did play out, this did form a schematic for us, as we do one down here at these lows. We have two all the way up here. And then we have three all the way down here. And then we have four. And something I want to point out, guys, pretty briefly, is that, each one of these levels did have a consolidation before moving into it. As you see, we had this consolidation phase for about about 3-4 months, right? Forming out until a breakout. Then we had about 5 weeks here of consolidating at this very exciting movement. Stock completely stopped, consolidated, and then we had this drip down. According, we had another consolidation. So we are in the breakout phase in very, very simple terms. We're expecting stock to continue this trend and move in this direction. It doesn't have to go exactly linear. As when we look in the past, the first place we had resistance in these previous breakout spot was this exact spot where Tesla's stock is at right now. And we've been mentioning this over the last few videos. Ever since we ran into this spot at 350, we mentioned there is some resistance here. And we got over it for a day, another one, but then we wicked out ultimately. So we've been halted at this previous spot, or you see on the weekly, we're held that for 1, 2, 3 weeks. Doesn't mean we have to be pressed here for 3 weeks, but it is a possibility, and ultimately that level did get breached and it continued to move up higher. So, just from looking at that perspective, guys, we have a lot of room to go. It doesn't mean we have to completely retrace and go all the way back up to $500, but it is in the possibility. I argue it's a lot more probable we do go to that $500 range, then come back down to the floor of 220, which is such a nice area, guys, and that's another sign where it really shows what the buyers want to do within the stock. I mean, this is such a historical level we talked about over the last few weeks. And since then, with that very nice bullish engulfing, it's been leading the dance. We consolidated nicely, started to break out, and really we're only one candle into this breakout. So I definitely feel in the weekly perspective, we have more room to go. Each one of these candles represents 1 week. So this is not a short-term analysis, but looking at the long term, we definitely lean very bullish. Guys, I think there's a lot more room to go. Things can change on a day-by-day / weekly basis. If anything does change on the weekly, we will cover that. But just being unbiased, guys, looking at the technicals, keeping it raw, we're looking at a very strong stock, and not to, compare apples to oranges, but Tesla has been a very strong stock over the last few days in the market and really getting its feet again, so definitely can't be bearish on the weekly perspective. With that being said, let's go hop over to the daily. On the daily time frame, we currently are seeing Tesla consolidate as we have a bunch of mirrored candles. That's the first thing that stands out, guys. The last besides this, wide bar with the wick on the bottom and the top, we see almost four of the same exact candles. And these candles represent not indecision, but a pretty even playing field. As when this day started down here, pushed all the way up to these highs before pressing all the way down and ultimately closing right here, doing the same exact thing for 4 days in a row, testing the bottom, testing the top, testing the bottom, testing the top, testing the bottom, testing the top, testing the bottom. Not quite the bottom, but the median point, and you get the gist. So there's already a lot of touch points on the daily time frame. And coinciding, guys, this matches a key level in the past. As you see this consolidation phase over here in the past, it really held that spot really nicely. It was a very, very big explosive move up. We came down, we kind of flagged out a little bit, another gap up, going straight up, and then stock, held this level key, guys, right here if we mark it up. So it does make sense, as this was a major spot in the past. We have a little bit of a halt at. And even coming back to here, guys, you see the stock when we previously ran all the way up to close to 500 bucks. We came down, we're bouncing on this level for eventually confirming below it, that 380. Since then, we came down, we wicked out, we came up, and look at that, guys. We're bouncing all around this spot. So, this was to be expected, and it's holding up pretty decent. The last candle, of course, we are shoving at the bottom of that range. So it is a little bit more fragile. Of course, you'd want to see it open to the top. This is nothing new. But guys, this is still a win for Tesla stock chart. To exit this pretty solid phase and continue to set this consolidation, it looks pretty nice, as this could open the doors for a potential bull flag like structure maybe a couple of days down the road. This definitely does appear to be setting up for something like that. And then if that does happen, guys, and that pattern fruitions, now we have another cool off zone, a week or two, stock really getting tight, being held after a breakout, a mini breakout, right? Switching the trends, getting out of this downward phase movement, right? Getting out of this consolidation. And now it's just hanging out over that level. It definitely is set up on the daily to be quite a nice bull flag. We have that very nice bull flag structure. And what's interesting is this, this could be a bull flag continuation. Just notice this in live effect as we marked up this bull flag and we were watching it about 2 weeks ago as it formed out right here. So we could see a very similar thing, guys. And I would expect this to take a couple days. So looking at the weekly, guys, before we get too ahead of ourselves and dive too deep, we do have the floor around that 335, 334, that general zone. That's going to be the floor for this. If we do break that level, it is pretty likely we do come down to 322, as between those two floors, there's zero gap in support. So it would be nice to see stock hold that level, ideally, from a bullish perspective. If you're a bear, you want to see that level get breached so we can come back down, as there's a lot of bullish signs, guys. For the stock to completely flip bearish as far as a long-term perspective, we need to come back down to that big level we were shouting for weeks and weeks, 295. That was the containment of this phase. So, from the, daily perspective, guys, we're watching that range, so we'll be watching the top at that 350 and the bottom around that 335 to 34 range. So right away, guys, looking at the hourly, we see how Tesla is very, very prone to these bull flags. It's going to be the major thing. And the last thing we mentioned on this is that, we had this descending channel, this bull flag come up, go sideways, and then break out. Come up, bull flag goes descending, coming back down to that level, descending, come back down to level, breakout. Right? We come up, we descend, we get tight, it's a little bit more of a smaller structure, we break out. We come up, we go sideways, and we break out. We mentioned each one of these flags, guys, this one, we've been mentioning this on the channel. And Tesla is so beautiful in that reason. And it's one of those stocks that really, really follows those constraints. It really respects descending support, descending resistance, all that, guys. So, ascending supports. Anywho, we do see this flag playing out once again. We have a broader channel as far as now. It's not very, very tight, not a couple candles, but we are seeing that again, guys. So, until these floors get collapsed, then we can focus on where will the next spot be? Where will it come down to? Which will likely be 322, right? But until now, guys, we're still squeezing, setting up nice. Now we're in a pretty big channel, so this probably will take a couple days to play out. I think it's pretty unrealistic that we come up at 350 and we break that over the next day or two. The last piece of the puzzle is to briefly check out QQQ, because QQQ does mirror Tesla in a lot of ways, and that'll give us more data on where Tesla stock price can go over the next few days. Seeing the confirmation of the green to red, which we've been mentioning, this is such a massive move, guys, from $402 all the way to 520 in a matter of about a month, in a week. So to see that massive movements of this degree, 20, 25%, we'll get a marker point to see exactly what that is. About 30%. So I was like, that's a massive movement, guys. So to see that, to play out in such a short time frame, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 daily green candles, you gotta be thinking, and we pointed this out in the last couple of videos, you gotta be thinking green to red, sorry. When a stock is extremely extended, we get a ton of green candles forming. When we do print the red candle, it is more likely we get a couple of red days to follow. How low that will go, it's impossible to say as of now, but we'll be watching the floor of that $501 level, which does confirm right on that psychological $500 range, which is key, guys. On the channel, we follow these key spots: 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Historically, over time, they do play a nice psychological level for buyers and sellers. So, we'll be watching. We definitely are bearish as far as the next few days, but guys, the market is historically so strong. Look at the monthly, straight up. It is very, very hard to short the market. If you are a profitable long-term bear on the market, you are a very special individual, because it could be extremely extended. Like if we go in the past, and find a random example, we ran all the way, very similar situation here, all the way up here for kind of having a similar situation, red to green. We get the red candle here, and we did get a couple of days of flush, but immediately picked back up in base. So as of now, guys, definitely bullish. I expect maybe a little bit of a pullback, couple of days, consolidation. We'll see when we get the next candle printed as far as like what's the next concrete moves. But going back to Tesla, guys, we're in a pretty key range, forming this, after forming this pretty nice move. Keep an eye on that bull flag. It's a very good possibility. We flag out into the support level, similar as we did over here, and we tracked, so keep an eye on that floor. That 334 to 335 is a very key spot, especially for the short-term aspect, and the ceiling being 350. As we've seen in the past, he's been some major spots. So let's not take this lightly, guys. It's definitely a very important spot, but we could see a little bit of a cool off. I do expect we hang in this range for a couple of days, but you never know. The markets could be having a little bit of turmoil. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found value, like, subscribe, all that. Appreciate all the new support, guys. It's been a lot of fun, and cool to come on there and help you guys out any way I can. Maybe showing you a few tools on my tool bag. With that being said, guys, take care. Have a good day. Take care and peace.